Hi guys, it's me ChazzaHD and welcome to the qualifying watch-along for the 2019 United States Grand Prix, of course at the Circuit of Americas in Austin, Texas. And after practice 2 and practice 3, sessions that were, say, a lot more representative than practice 1, I think we are in for a bit of a different, say, battle in qualifying at the very top of the timesheets for sure than we were expecting coming into this weekend. And I think we are in for another very exciting and good qualifying session today in Texas. Hopefully you guys are doing well who are watching right now, and no matter what time it is in the world, hopefully today with me you will watch along and enjoy qualifying for the 2019 US Grand Prix. But as I just mentioned, there was a practice session earlier on today, about 2 hours ago, and these were the results of that session. So, Max Verstappen was P1 from Sebastian Vettel P2. Lando Norris was P3, but he did cut a couple corners quite badly, and that's why really he finished up in P3. Still a good effort though. Bottas P4, Hamilton P5, Albon P6. And then completing the top 10, Sainz, Raikkonen, Gasly and Ricciardo. And then it was Hülkenberg, Stroll, Grosjean, Kvyat, Magnussen. And then as we scroll down, Giovinazzi, Russell, Kubica, Perez, and Charles Leclerc. Now, Sergio Perez, in case you guys don't know, has picked up quite a severe penalty. He must start from the pit lane for tomorrow's race because he missed the weighbridge in practice 2. So he gets the same punishment as what Pierre Gasly got in Baku. So Perez will start tomorrow's race from the back, so no matter what he does in qualifying, he will be starting from the pit lane. And Charles Leclerc, the reason that he didn't complete a full lap is because on his first lap of practice 3, he stopped the car with a problem. Now, Charles Leclerc's problem with the car was an oil leak. What Ferrari have done is replaced the power unit that was in the car and replaced it with an old one. So he won't take a penalty, but we don't know if the new power unit they put in, which is an old one but is new for this weekend, we don't know if it's a Spec 2 or a Spec 3 power unit, but he will not have a penalty for this US Grand Prix. So that is good news, I guess, for Ferrari and Charles Leclerc. But when it comes to practice, as we know, practice 2 is normally the most representative session of the weekend. And the results of that yesterday were Lewis Hamilton in P1 with a great lap, even though he did get quite a big toe off of Robert Kubica, I believe, in the Williams. Leclerc was 2nd, Verstappen was 3rd, Vettel was 4th, Bottas 5th, Albon 6th, and then completing the top 10 were Gasly, Sainz, Stroll, and Giovinazzi. And then P12, or P11, P12, 13th and 14th, you can see there were Ricciardo, Kvyat, Hülkenberg, and Norris. And then the rest of the field, Perez, Raikkonen, Magnussen, Grosjean, Russell, and Kubica. So the results of practice 2, I think, are probably the most representative of what we have seen so far this weekend. But of course, it doesn't mean that will be the final order of qualifying later on. But let's now get into the teams and how I think they'll do in qualifying today, based off of how they're going to go around this track and how they've done so far. So first off, the Silver Arrows Mercedes. Now, I think so far this weekend, I don't know what it is, but they actually look a couple tenths of a second closer to Ferrari than I was expecting. I thought Ferrari really this weekend, even in practice with their engine turned down, would be quite clearly faster than what Mercedes are. But I think Mercedes are definitely right in there for the fight for pole position. They're not far off at all. They can absolutely get pole today if one of their drivers, Valtteri Bottas or Lewis Hamilton, can produce an absolutely, barnstorming lap in qualifying today. So they can get pole, but the only, I guess, caveat to that is we don't know how much power Ferrari were saving, I guess, in practice 1, 2, and 3. So maybe Ferrari really do have a dominant car in qualifying trim. We don't know that yet, of course, but from what I've seen so far, Mercedes are not as far off as I thought they would be over a single lap. So if one of the Ferrari drivers does have an issue or, makes a mistake on one of their final laps in qualifying, and the two Mercedes drivers, Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas, can bang in a great lap, then pole position is absolutely possible for this team. No doubt about it. Their car, even though it's probably not the quickest in qualifying trim, it is still a very, very good car. So definitely watch out for them in qualifying today. But still, my favourites for pole position today, and really the front row lockout as long as everything goes fine, is Ferrari, because they have, I think, the quicker qualifying car than anyone else in the field. And I do think they are saving not that much power, but a bit of power for qualifying, when they need to show it. And the two drivers so far this weekend have looked pretty good. Sebastian Vettel was looking, I think, okay in practice 3 this morning. And in practice 2, Charles Leclerc was looking good as well. And I think Charles Leclerc is probably more likely to be the front-running Ferrari driver, because so far this weekend, Leclerc has looked the better driver. So I think Charles Leclerc is, as a driver, the favourite for pole position, kind of because of himself, but also massively because of how great the Ferrari car is over a single lap. So, yeah, Ferrari, they're the favourites of pole, no doubt about it. And it would be a big surprise, honestly, if they weren't on pole. It really, really would, because their car is so good over a single lap. Of course, when it comes to the race tomorrow, I don't think Ferrari will have the best car at all. But today, if they don't make any mistakes and everything goes fine, it's going to take a monumental effort for them not to be on pole position. So we'll see what happens later on with Ferrari. And the final top team, of course, is Red Bull Racing. Red Bull also, kind of like Mercedes, are looking a bit closer to, say, Ferrari than I thought they would be. Max Verstappen, of course, topping practice 3. That is quite a surprise to see that. I don't think necessarily the Red Bull car is great this weekend in qualifying trim. I think it does have a lot to do with Max Verstappen being very, very good this weekend, and he is very quick at this track, the Circuit of Americas. But there is no doubt about it, the driver and car combination of Max Verstappen in the Red Bull powered by Honda is probably 2 or 3 tenths of a second closer over a single lap than I thought they would be coming into the weekend. So if Max Verstappen can pull out an absolutely banging lap in qualifying today, then he might be able to be on the second row of the grid. I don't think Max Verstappen will get on the front row. It would be one of the best qualifying performances of the season if he did that, to get on the front row at a track like this in qualifying. So we'll see what he does. But yeah, Max Verstappen, definitely in that top 3 team battle, you're going to have to watch out for him, because he is probably the most likely, I think, to provide a surprise in qualifying. For Alex Albon, he has been quite a bit off his teammates so far this weekend. I know Albon hasn't raced here before, but he does need to close that gap in speed between himself and Max Verstappen so far this weekend, because he's been 3/4 of a second to a second off his pace. And of course, that is not good enough. So hopefully Albon can try and get, say, half a second off. That wouldn't be too bad. But yeah, if he's a second off, then not looking great for Albon at all going into the rest of the weekend. But guys, before we get into the midfield teams, let me know right now in the live chat, for Mercedes, Ferrari and Red Bull, what do you expect from them today? Do you think Mercedes can get pole position? And do you think they are close enough to Ferrari to do so on pure pace? Are Ferrari for you the favourites for pole position and even a front row lockout? And for Red Bull with Max Verstappen, if he does pull out a great lap, then what can Max Verstappen do today? Where can he end up? Let me know in the live chat. And for the next 10 minutes or so, I'll read out your comments and then we'll get onto the midfield soon after that. But before I read out your comments, guys, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, as we will be doing the race watch along tomorrow, of course, for the race for the 2019 US Grand Prix. We'll be starting at about 6 p.m. UK time. So don't forget to subscribe for that. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there, or go to my homepage and subscribe there and hit the notifications bell. And also don't forget to hit the like button for more content like this. But now let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. And by the way, great to see already about 300 people in the chat and watching. So great to see you all. Hopefully you're all doing well, and yeah, great to have you all here. By the way, thank you for saying great new graphics, Chazza. Sebastian saying, I think Ferrari are still sandbagging as they are not that much quicker on the straights than Mercedes, probably because of Leclerc engine going. Still think Leclerc will get pole though. Yeah, they're definitely not pushing as hard as they can, and I think, as you said, after Leclerc's problem in practice 3 with Sebastian Vettel, they would have been conserving a bit of power so they don't overstress it and have another issue, because this has been a problem for Ferrari in 2019, where they do have the best engine in Formula 1. There is no doubt about that. I know people want to say, oh, it's because they have a low drag concept. They do, but they're not gaining, 6 to 7 tenths of a second just with lower wing settings. I can guarantee you that. Again, they do have the most amount of power, but it's probably one of the most unreliable power units of 2019. Charles Leclerc, of course, was cost the race win in Bahrain. They had a double reliability issue in Hockenheim that cost them probably a first and third at best. Cost Sebastian Vettel a couple times in, I think, Manicourt, what am I on about? Paul Ricard and Austria. So despite Ferrari having a lot of power, they don't have still reliability locked down, and it is a weakness of the Ferrari power unit that despite the immense power level they have, it's not always reliable. And I think that's the great thing about the Mercedes power unit, is that it's not as powerful, but it is reliable enough to the point where it is overall a good power unit to have. Right, let's take a look at some more comments here. See what you guys are saying. If Max gets a pole position, he will win the GP, but I think Lewis get pole, then he wins. Max second, Vettel third. I think if Max Verstappen was to somehow get pole position, then Max Verstappen probably would win the race, because again, as I've said earlier on in the weekend, he's finished second and fourth in the last 2 years after starting near the back of the grid, or at the literally back of the grid. So imagine what he could do from a normal grid position. And I think for Verstappen, that's kind of the aim today compared to previous races in America, is that he needs to, if he's going to win this race, a race that he could have won last year if he did start a lot higher, he's got to put himself in a position where he can have a great chance of winning, instead of having to come from miles behind and put in a great drive to be even on the podium. So if he can qualify P4 or even P5, I think that's all right enough, because that will give him, with the car he does have, a good enough shot to be in there for the race victory later on Sunday. So again, just be P4 or P5, I think, for Verstappen, and that'll be good enough. Right, let's find some others here. Shannon Vickery, I think it is, says Mercedes has the best car. Aerodynamically, yes, no doubt about it. Overall, in qualifying trim, I think the Ferrari is the best car. But in race trim, I think the best car is the Mercedes. So make of that what you will. But I think aerodynamically, even though the Ferrari has improved, it's still not as good for me as the Mercedes or the Red Bull. It's a lot closer between those three teams in terms of grip, but I think Mercedes do have the best car. If they had the amount of power Ferrari have, then Mercedes could have probably won every race this season. That's how good their chassis is. Nawesh, I'm not going to read that one out. Let's find some other comments here. Bastian, even if Ferrari used the Spec 2 power unit, it's still so fast in a straight line. Just look at Spa. It's just a little bit unreliable. If they do use the Spec 2, they will be down on power for sure, compared to, say, Russia, Suzuki, races like that, where I think they were definitely using the Spec 3. But yeah, they probably still will have an advantage on the straights compared to Mercedes and Red Bull. But it just won't be anywhere near as big as it was at Spa, for example, where they were gaining 3/4 of a second a lap on the long straights. Well, let's find a couple more. And then we'll get to the midfield. Fast beat Ferrari apparently doesn't have the same engine advantage in race trim. No, they don't. And I think that's because they're able to run it so aggressively in qualifying that they can't run it anywhere near that aggressively. One, because it's a bit unreliable, the Ferrari power unit of 2019, but also they just, if they did run it anywhere near as aggressively as they did in qualifying, then I think they would struggle quite a lot. And they also, Ferrari, do tend to struggle when it comes to fuel consumption. And I think that's probably a slight hint as to where Ferrari are getting their power from in qualifying. I think it does have a small thing to do with the fuel. And I think that's why Ferrari in the race are not able to use the amount of power they do have, or they rather do use in qualifying. And by the way, before I came on today, I saw a very interesting story that Red Bull, after Red Bull inquired about a loophole to do with the fuel flow management or limit or something like that, that the FIA have given out a technical directive. Now, I don't know if Red Bull or Honda have finally found out what Ferrari are doing, but again, I think Ferrari struggling with fuel consumption that they have done a couple times this season. I think that's a slight hint as to where the power does come from in qualifying for that team. Right, we'll find out one final comment and then we'll get to the midfield pack. Francisco, do you think McLaren can mix up in the top 6? If Albon doesn't perform and is quite a bit off his teammate, then yeah, I think they can get in there. But realistically, P7 at best, I think, for McLaren. And De Rugara saying Alexander Albon deserves the Red Bull seat in 2020. If you compare what he's done so far compared to Gasly, yes. But if you're counting Daniel Kvyat in there, then I have to say no. Again, if I was choosing out of those 3 drivers, Albon, Kvyat and Gasly, it'd be Kvyat because he has had a podium, of course, this season and has been very, very impressive. And I think he is right now and probably for the next couple of years, unless Albon, massively improves, I think Kvyat is the best option going forward as a teammate to Max Verstappen. And also, because of his year at Ferrari being a test driver, he is also now a lot more intelligent in the technical department, I guess you could say, in terms of how to set up a car and stuff like that. So I think Kvyat does deserve the seat. But again, if you're choosing out of Albon and Gasly, then yeah, Albon would be the better choice than Pierre Gasly in my opinion. But let's now get to the midfield. And first off, Renault, who have been about where I've expected, just inside the top 10, one car outside the top 10. They've not been great so far this weekend, but they're in the fight, I think, for sure, with McLaren, Toro Rosso at the front of the midfield pack. And I think compared to Mexico and Suzuka, they will have a lot better of a qualifying session. I think today's qualifying will be kind of similar to, say, Singapore or Russia, where they're, P9, P10-ish, say, at best, or maybe P8 at best. I think definitely that's where Renault can, in terms of position, that's where they can get to. But again, let's not expect too much from Renault, because how many times in 2019, after an okay practice, have Renault then disappointed in qualifying or for the rest of the weekend? So let's wait and see what Renault will do. Hopefully they don't disappoint again and get both cars knocked out of Q2. I think they'll be fine today. I think one car will get into the second part, or the third part, sorry, and one car will probably get knocked out just about on time in the second part of qualifying. But yeah, it should be better for Renault, and it has to be if they are now to confirm P5 in the Constructors. By the way, big news of Renault. Pat Fry, who was of McLaren and Ferrari in the past, has now officially signed up to Renault for 2020 and beyond. Now, this appointment I don't think has that much to do with 2020. I think it is really Renault getting prepared for 2021, because also they let go another person in their technical department and inherited a designer who was at Williams, I think. So Renault are making moves for 2021, but it is nice to see, though, that Renault are, really getting some good, smart people in like Pat Fry to help Renault climb the grid. Because if Renault in 2021 are in the same place as they are right now, then Renault might as well pull out, because there's no point in them continuing in Formula 1 if they can't improve on what they've been doing in the last couple of years. Next up, though, is McLaren. And yeah, McLaren, I think they'll be fine. They seem as though they have the best car in the midfield with Norris and Sainz. And as long as both drivers, drive well and don't get their times deleted or make a mistake, it should be a rather comfortable qualifying session. Hopefully for McLaren, though, the race tomorrow goes not even a bit, a much better than it did in Mexico. But for qualifying, they'll be fine. I think P7 and P9 is probably where they'll end up. And I think McLaren, even though Toro Rosso have been very close to them this weekend, I think McLaren will be fine. I think McLaren have a good enough car, and they should be, with Carlos Sainz for sure, comfortably at the front of the midfield pack. Next up, Alfa Romeo. Now, there's actually been a bit of a difference of Alfa this weekend. I thought coming into the weekend that they would basically replicate their performances from, say, Suzuka, Russia, and the last race in Mexico, where they're, say, around P13, not too far off the top 10, but not really close enough to say they're right in that battle. And then, in the race, they end up finishing around P13, P14. And yeah, coming into this weekend, that's where I thought Alfa would be. But so far, they've actually popped some cars into the top 10 at times. Antonio Giovinazzi in practice 2, as you saw earlier on, was in P10 in practice 2. And Kimi Raikkonen was P8, I think, in practice 3. So Alfa, so far, seem as though they have a bit of a better car around this track than even I was expecting, or maybe they were expecting, for this weekend's race. And yeah, I think Alfa will probably be, around P11, P12. I don't think they will end up getting in the top 10 Alfa, because I still don't think Alfa have a good enough car for that. But they will be around P11, P12, P13, and I think Alfa will be on lap time. They'll be close to the top 10, but I don't think they'll be getting in there. And I think position-wise, it will be very similar to the last couple races, despite, in practice so far, it looking, slightly better. Next up is Haas F1, and it's been a miserable home race so far for this team. Romain Grosjean crashing in practice 2. The new front wing on Kevin Magnussen's car that the Haas team brought for this race has been took off, because according to Haas, it's not improved the car at all. So bad news for Haas. And so far, if you look at practice, they haven't really got any pace, similar to Mexico. I don't think they're as bad as they were in Mexico, but again, they don't have really any speed in the car. And it is quite a shame, because again, they're the home team. I'm sure there's going to be people at the track today and tomorrow supporting the Haas F1 team, but again, they don't have any speed. They don't have it, and it's just a continuation, really, of the problems they've had this season. So a shame for Haas, but we'll see what happens in qualifying later on. Next up, Toro Rosso, a team that is the dark horse, I think, going into qualifying, because so far in practice, especially Pierre Gasly, Toro Rosso with Gasly in that car have looked very, very good. Gasly's been consistently in the top 10. The Toro Rosso car has looked very good in the fast parts of the track, and in the slow parts it's doing just about well enough to be competitive with their midfield rivals. And yeah, the car is looking pretty good around the Circuit of Americas. I don't think qualifying will be, say, a double Q3 appearance like it was in Mexico, but I think Toro Rosso will just about sneak a car into the top 10, and I think it will be Pierre Gasly because he has been, so far this weekend, the better driver. And given how he performed also last year at times, he is looking like he really does enjoy this track and that he does go very well at this track. So yeah, I think Gasly, he'll be in there. Toro Rosso will be in there. Kvyat, he should be close to Gasly, but I'm not sure if Kvyat can get the job done, because even though, of course, he qualified P9 at Mexico plenty of times in 2019, Daniel Kvyat has had the car to get a good result, but ended up just not getting the lap time. It's happened way too many times for him in that Toro Rosso, and I think the same will kind of happen again for him. But for Pierre Gasly, I think Toro Rosso are going to be a bit of a dark horse today, so look out for them, and for Pierre Gasly as well. Next up, the last midfield team is Racing Point, and the speed of the Racing Point this weekend is, I guess, as expected. They're not quick enough to be in the top 10, but they are quick enough to be, around Alpha probably in qualifying trim, I think. And of course, Sergio Perez, who is normally the quicker qualifying driver, as I said earlier on the stream, has to start from the pit lane because he missed the weighbridge in practice 2 and has got the same punishment as Pierre Gasly got in Baku for the same offence. So whatever Perez does in qualifying does not matter. So yeah, that's a shame for Racing Point. Hopefully he can come through though and get a decent result tomorrow. But for Stroll, hopefully we can, with Lance Stroll, see a bit of an improvement in qualifying, because in Suzuka, if you remember back to that race, he qualified, I think, P12 or P11 and was looking quite good. And then in Mexico, he qualified in P16 and then went on to have a pretty good race. But, after Suzuka and that very good weekend in terms of general pace in qualifying and the Grand Prix, he went back to the bad old Lance Stroll, really, in qualifying trim. So hopefully Lance, with Perez out of the session, basically, hopefully, Lance can do well for the team and do the team proud, but not looking great, is it, for Racing Point? And then the final team, of course, is Williams, and they will be at the very back. But guys, before we get into the predictions, let me know for the next 10 minutes or so in the live chat, for the midfield, what do you think will happen with those certain teams? For Renault, how do you think Renault will do? Do you think they'll do better? Do you think they'll do better than they did in Mexico? Sorry. Do you think McLaren will dominate the midfield battle? How do you think Alpha and home team Haas F1 will do? And are Toro Rosso for you a dark horse today? And what can Lance Stroll do in the Racing Point? Let me know in the live chat, and I'll read out your comments in just a moment. But I'm sure, as you guys can hear, my throat is breaking up a bit, so I'm going to have a quick drink, and then I'll read your comments out for the next 10 minutes or so. Right, so let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. By the way, great to see you, Sid. Says agreed. Hope everyone is having a great Saturday. I am. Hopefully you guys are too. Right. Let's find some comments here. So Michael Arvin says it will be Toro Rosso, McLaren, Renault and Alpha, the front four midfield teams. That would be definitely a bit of a surprise for Toro Rosso to be at the front of the midfield pack. I know they were good in Mexico, but even though Toro Rosso have had a good season, they rarely on pace in qualifying had the best midfield car. I think in Monaco they did, but other than that, I don't think Toro Rosso really had the best car in the midfield at all this season, except for the Monaco Grand Prix. Right, let's find some other comments here. The people asking about Charles Leclerc's car, again, as I said earlier, his car had an oil leak, and Ferrari have replaced that power unit with an old one they used earlier in the season, so no penalty incurred, as long as the one they put in, the old one, doesn't break also. If that one breaks, then he will have to take a penalty, I think. Yeah, not the greatest thing to have to start off your day, but he doesn't have a grid penalty. And I think that is a pretty important thing going forward, of course, for Ferrari. Lance Stroll is a Canadian hero. He will qualify in 17th and, as usual, make up places in the race and finish 9th on Sunday. That's exactly, isn't it, what he did in Canada. He had a terrible qualifying, just like his teammate Sergio Perez did, and then he flew through the pack in the race. Again, though, with Stroll, if he could get his qualifying sorted and qualify around about where Sergio Perez qualifies, Stroll would be a really good driver in that midfield pack. But again, because he just can't, I guess, heat up the tyres in qualifying or get the car exactly where he wants in qualifying, that's why he ends up putting in poor results, I guess. But in the race, his pace is always very good. So I'm hoping that Stroll can, say, next year, because this year, you know, the year is basically over. Hopefully next season he can start qualifying, you know, P12, P13 at worst, because then with his great starts he normally makes, he can then, you know, on a regular basis finish in the points. Stroll was not that good in the race, to be honest. I think you need to look at the races more, and also if you go and look at the lap analysis, the lap by lap comparisons of Stroll to other drivers in the midfield, his pace, again, is very strong. He's a very strong race driver, but I think in qualifying, he is just an extreme case of one of those drivers who is, you know, always slower in qualifying than they are in the race. Sergio Perez is a driver that is always slower in qualifying than he is in the race, but it's nowhere near as extreme as it is for Stroll. So yeah, hopefully he can get that fixed eventually. Rob Wilson, how long have you been watching F1? I've seen all but 2 races since 2005. I've been watching Formula 1 since the 2011 Japanese Grand Prix, where, of course, Sebastian Vettel won his 2nd world title. And yeah, that is when I started watching this brilliant sport. Let me find a few more comments and then we'll get to my predictions for this qualifying session. Say, Rugara, which Ferrari driver do you think has had the better season? That's quite a difficult question. Sebastian Vettel in the first 7 races was clearly the better driver. Charles did have a couple bits of bad luck, but generally Leclerc was just not getting the best out of the car like he has been later on in the season. But then really since Paul Ricard, Leclerc has been, I think, the better driver. So I think you would have to say Charles Leclerc, and also because Leclerc does have more race victories than Sebastian Vettel this season. So I'd have to say Charles Leclerc, but it is close. It is close between the two. But Leclerc, I think, will probably end up beating Sebastian in the championship by, I don't know, 15 or 20 points, which is not that much in the drivers' table. By the way, hello to Tonka. Great to see you, mate. Fantastico. Shazza, what was your favourite backmarker team? Caterham, Marussia, or HRT? None of them, to be honest. I did like Manor at the end in 2016, but I couldn't really care for them, to be honest, that much. let's find some other comments here if I can. Good ones. Sid, to do with Stroll, says, yeah, putting together a perfect lap has always been his weakness. I see it as evidence that he could have been seasoned a little more in junior formulas. Well, yeah, that could have helped, but I think Stroll is definitely one of those drivers who is always rather a better race driver than a qualifying driver, but his lack of speed on a Saturday is just a bit more extreme compared to other drivers. There's been plenty of drivers in Formula 1 history who have had better race pace than qualifying pace. For example, Jenson Button, Kimi Räikkönen, Sergio Perez, who else? Rubens Barrichello. There's been plenty of drivers who have always had much better race pace than qualifying pace, but his pace in qualifying and the race is way too far apart. It needs to be a lot closer. It's not a bad thing being, quicker in the race than in qualifying, but it needs to be a lot closer together. So in the race, he can finish in a lot better positions than he has been, because if he did start, say, 3 or 4 positions higher every race, then he would be quite high in the driver's table, to be honest. Right. Let's find one more comment. And yeah, Mr. Random Guy saying Alonso. Yeah, that's another great case. Fernando Alonso. He was very, very, good or great even in the races, but in qualifying wouldn't always get it together. And again, it's not a bad thing to be off the boil in qualifying and be a lot better in the race, but he just needs to bring his qualifying speed a lot closer to his race speed. Right, let's find one comment and then we'll move on to the predictions. Find a good one here. Formula Factor says, to further answer the Ferrari question, we have to wait until the end of the season because Vettel has been bang on the pace since Singapore. He has been better, but I wouldn't say he's been great. I think he was better in the first 7 races, to be honest, than he was, or has been rather, since Singapore. Because even though he has had certain races or qualifying sessions where he has been, since Singapore, good, I think he was more consistently good in the first 7 races. And I think really what happened in Canada with the penalty, that was a big cause as to why his form dropped. I know he had a couple of reliability issues in France and Austria, but his form definitely dropped off after that penalty in Canada, which of course denied the win that, in my opinion, he fully deserved in that Grand Prix. But guys, it is now time to get on to my predictions for qualifying for the 2019 US Grand Prix. For the next 20 minutes or so, let me know in the live chat who, in your opinion, will get pole position and finish in 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th. And if you want to do the full-on grid, then go ahead and do so if you want to. But just make sure to give me, at the very least, your top 3 for qualifying today, in your opinion, for the US Grand Prix. Now, my predictions are exactly the same, guys, as it was in my preview, because so far this weekend, with the practice I've seen, I haven't really had my opinion be changed, so far this weekend by the certain teams and drivers. So my predictions, again, are the same as it was in my preview for the US Grand Prix. By the way, if you haven't seen that preview, make sure to do so. Uploaded it a couple days ago, but here is my full-on predictions for qualifying. So here you go. So, in my opinion, the top 10 will be Charles Leclerc on pole position, Sebastian Vettel will be in 2nd, Lewis Hamilton will be 3rd, Valtteri Bottas will be 4th, Max Verstappen 5th, and Alex Albon in P6. And then the front 4 at the midfield in the top 10 will be Carlos Sainz, Nico Hülkenberg, Lando Norris, and Pierre Gasly. Now in Q2, I know I have Sergio Perez in P11. if he does decide to do qualifying as he normally would, then I still think he will qualify in P11. But if he doesn't, then of course he will end up finishing in P20. But if he does decide to go out there and do qualifying properly, then I think Perez will be a P11, Grosjean P12, Raikkonen P13, Ricciardo I think will be P14, because if you've noticed, as of late, Ricciardo has not really been getting his qualifying together as of late. And I think Hülkenberg is better, I think, around this track. So, yeah, I think Daniel Ricciardo will have another struggling qualifying session, but I think he'll be a lot stronger in the race tomorrow. And then Daniel Kvyat, again, as I said earlier, because plenty of times this season, Daniel has been unable to get that lap together in certain qualifying sessions this season and, you know, get the best out of the car for him. I think that will happen again and he'll qualify in P15, and then knocked out in Q1 will be Stroll, Giovinazzi, Magnussen, Russell and Kubica. So those are my predictions for qualifying of the 2019 US Grand Prix. And guys, let me know, again, who is your pole man, second place person, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. And if you want to do the top 10 or the entire grid, is your decision. But again, give me at least your top 3 for what you think the grid will be for the US Grand Prix this weekend. And now I'll move on to a different picture and also have another drink again of water to keep my throat in a good way once qualifying gets underway very soon. So I'll be back in just a moment. Right, so before actually I go on to reading out what you guys think will happen today, let me read out some of these stats scrolling along the bottom of the screen, because these stats are important to what might happen today in qualifying. So as you can see there, most team poles at the Circuit of Americas is the Silver Arrows Mercedes. Last year's pole sitter is Lewis Hamilton. The most poles at the US Grand Prix is tied at the moment between Lewis Hamilton and Michael Schumacher. But if Lewis does get pole, of course, he will be the record pole sitter for the US Grand Prix. Most Team US Grand Prix poles is actually Team Lotus back in the 1960s up to 1978. Lewis Hamilton is going for his 5th pole position at the US Grand Prix. The Team Mercedes are going for their 6th consecutive pole at COTA. Ferrari are looking to take their first US Grand Prix pole since 2006, and Red Bull are going for their first pole at the US Grand Prix and the Circuit of Americas since 2013. And as you can see there, the circuit length, the race distance, and the qualifying lap record that we need to look out for today for it to be broken. The lap record in qualifying is Lewis Hamilton in 2018, a 1 minute 32.237. So remember that lap time, because we might be seeing that broken today. And I think we will. I think it'll be broken by 2 or 3 tenths of a second. But now let's see what you guys think will happen in qualifying today. Let me find the first prediction and we'll go all the way down. And find the first one if I can. See, there you go. Dutch Partisan says Verstappen, Leclerc, Hamilton for the top 3. Who else have we got here? Bram Ono says Hamilton, Verstappen, Leclerc. Let's find another one. G says Bottas, Vettel, Hamilton. Taslim Ahmed says Max, Hamilton, Leclerc, Vettel, Bottas, Albon, Sainz. Dan says Verstappen, Vettel, Hamilton. Johnny says Hamilton pole and Hamilton will win again in his opinion. Mr. Labman says Max on pole from Vettel second, Hamilton third. Lots of people going for Max Verstappen on pole. It's a bit of a surprise, but who knows? He got it in Mexico and we didn't quite expect that to happen. Right, let's find another few. Rick Visser, Max Vettel, Leclerc. Tonka says Leclerc, Vettel, Lewis, Max, Bottas, Sainz, Norris, and Gasly. That's his top 8, I think. Rise says Hamilton, Vettel, Verstappen. Great to see you here, mate. Nawesh does a full grid. He goes Hamilton, Verstappen, Leclerc, Bottas, Albon, Norris, Sainz, Gasly, Ricciardo, Kvyat. And then from P11 down to P20, he says Giovinazzi, Hulkenberg, Kimi, Stroll, Russell, Magnussen, Grosjean, Kubica, Perez, and that Vettel will finish in 20th because his car will break down. Well, let's hope that doesn't happen, but it has happened, 2 or 3 times before this season? So it can happen. So Regara says Hamilton, Leclerc, Verstappen, Vettel, and Albon for the top 5. Will F1 says Hamilton, Leclerc, Vettel, Bottas, Verstappen, Albon, Sainz, Norris, Hulkenberg, Gasly. Gina says Bottas, Hamilton, Verstappen, Vettel, Leclerc, Albon. Let's cut to a different picture quickly. Go of Alex Albon, who again has been quite a bit off the speed or pace rather of Max Verstappen, but surely he can close up a bit today. It would be quite embarrassing though for sure if he ended up, a second off the pace of Max Verstappen. That would not be an acceptable performance by Albon. Right, Sid Viscus says Verstappen, Vettel, Leclerc, Hamilton, Albon, Norris, Bottas, Sainz, Gasly, Raikkonen. Rob says Verstappen, Vettel, Hamilton. Fantastico Football says Vettel, Hamilton, Bottas, Leclerc, Albon, Verstappen, Gasly, Sainz, Giovinazzi, Norris, Hulkenberg, Kvyat, Ricciardo, Grosjean, Raikkonen, Stroll, Magnussen. David Peck says Bottas, Hamilton, Vettel, Verstappen, Sainz, Albon, Norris. Lots of you thinking Albon is not going to do that well today, and I don't blame you guys because he hasn't shown us any evidence that he's actually going to be, in and around his teammate or Valtteri Bottas, even if Bottas is the slower of the 2 Silver Arrow cars today. So it's not surprised you guys are thinking he's not going to be that great. Tonka corrects his prediction by putting Albon in 6th. Rezar says Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas, Vettel, Leclerc, Albon. See if I can find some others I haven't read out yet. Hold on, just scrolled past a couple, I think. There you go. David Chimbaza says Leclerc, Vettel, Hamilton, Bottas, Verstappen, Albon. So he goes for the same top 6 as me. And then goes Norris, Sainz, Gasly, Hulkenberg. So you're going for the same top 10, but the midfield placings are a bit different. Well, a similar prediction there. Binod says, I think Checo won't do qualifying to make sure Stroll makes through to Q2. It would be smart if they did that, but I don't know if they will. We'll have to see. And then, making both Haas's, both Williams's and Perez out in Q1. Formula Factor says Vettel, Hamilton, Leclerc, Verstappen, Bottas, Albon, Sainz, Gasly, Norris, Hulkenberg, Ricciardo, and then Perez, Kvyat, Raikkonen, Giovinazzi, Stroll, Grosjean, Russell, and Kubica is his field. Seki Hybrid says Kota is so bumpy this year. Yes, it is, but I should have probably said this earlier, but there has been some, breaking news when it comes to the bumps at this track. That, of course, in Practice 2 yesterday, if you were watching the Practice 2 watch-along and listening along and watching the session, you would have seen that the bumps at the Circuit of America's track was very bad, especially down to Turn 1. They have actually, I think, repaired some of the bumps at Turn 1 and Turn 9, I think. So it's not as bumpy today as it was, but it is still quite bumpy, especially on the back straight and into Turn 19. And also through, I think, Turn 10 and down to Turn 11, it is still quite bumpy. So that's something the drivers have got to keep in mind when they're, braking and downshifting, is the bumps, because they really do make a big difference to how your car performs into the braking zones and acceleration zones, of course. And we will go on to this final picture before we get to the session of Charles Leclerc driving through some donuts there, if you know what I mean, from a racing terminology point of view. Right, let's find some more predictions before the session gets underway in 10 minutes' time. Rick says Hamilton, Vettel, Verstappen, Leclerc, Bottas, Albon, Norris, Sainz, Gasly, Hulkenberg, and then Ricciardo, Giovinazzi, Perez, Raikkonen, Kvyat, Stroll, Grosjean, Russell, Magnussen, and Kubica. James A says Haas will lock out the front row. Well, in an alternate reality, who knows if that is a possibility. Let me find some other predictions here. Voltron Max, how will Ferrari screw Leclerc this weekend? Probably on strategy, let's be honest, because that is the number one go-to. How can we mess up the weekend plan? Night Tash says Vettel, Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc, Bottas, Norris, Albon, Sainz. Kimo Maki says Heikki Kovalainen for pole. Right, let's find some others here if we can. Emma Dumay says Lewis will take pole, I believe. I feel like Mercedes are sandbagging. I get that feeling as well, but I also get the feeling that Ferrari have more power to give. So I think it will kind of equal itself out. No doubt, though, Mercedes are right there in the fight for pole position. They might not have the best car, but they're not that far off. They're probably a quarter of a second off at most, I would say so far, unless, again, Ferrari have been saving a monumental amount of power. We'll find out very soon. Find some other comments here, or predictions rather. If I can. See if there's any I've missed. I don't think so. Oh no, there is one. James Evans says Leclerc on pole, Verstappen second, and Vettel in third. Dan, if the US racetrack is so bumpy and bad, isn't this dangerous for the driver's safety as it could provoke accidents? Not really. I mean, all racetracks are different. Some tracks are very bumpy, some tracks are moderate in terms of bumps, and some tracks are just completely flat. The bumps this weekend I don't think are that bad. I don't think they're anywhere near as bad as they have been at certain other tracks in different eras. The most bumpy track I have ever seen is the pit straight at Interlagos around 2000, 2001. If you watch an onboard shot of a car back then on that pit straight at Interlagos, the cars they look undrivable even on a straight line. That's how bumpy it was. And I think in 2000, the 2000 Brazilian Grand Prix, I think Sauber had to pull out of the Grand Prix because they were having either their front or rear wings ripped off by the bumps. So we've had worse tracks or certain surfaces at certain tracks than we've had this weekend. I think it's fine, to be honest. I mean, yeah, if they can try and make it a bit less extreme, that's fine. But I wouldn't call it dangerous. I'd call it challenging. And of course, that is exciting to see at times, the drivers being challenged by the track conditions. Random guy saying some street circuit in Detroit is hella bumpy. You should check it out. Well, Anthony Davidson also mentioned another US track, Sebring, as being. He said, what was it? He said, you can't say this track is bumpy until you've driven at Sebring, which of course he's driven in the World Endurance Championship. So, yeah. I have never really seen any racing at Sebring, so I can't really say if it's that bumpy or not, but I'll believe him because he's raced there before. But again, I think there are definitely worse tracks out there for bumps than this one. And it was actually quite bumpy last year, but the drivers, I don't remember them complaining about it. Also, another big thing today is track limits on the exit of turn 19. The directive from the FIA is if you go over the curb, even though the white line is before the curb, if you go all four wheels over the curb onto the green paint, I think it is, then you will have your lap time deleted. So look out for that also. in qualifying today. But with 5 minutes to go until qualifying gets underway, I just need to let you guys know who are possibly new to the channel what we do for watch-alongs on this channel. So of course we do not show live video footage of the session because that would be breaking copyright law, and of course I don't want to get my channel destroyed and took down. So what I will show is a slideshow of pictures, about one picture every 4 minutes of the cars on track, so you guys can look at that. I'll have the running order running along the bottom of the screen as the F1 intro is now playing on Sky F1. And yeah, I'll have a running order running along the bottom of the screen on this bar you see, the new bar I have. And I'll update that probably 2 times per qualifying session. So twice in Q1, twice in Q2, and twice in Q3. That's as many times as I'm likely to update it during qualifying. And what I will do is provide a radio-style commentary of what is going on. So if you can watch the stream, then of course you can see the running order and the pictures on screen with the timer and everything like that. But if you cannot watch this session and watch this stream but only listen because you're at work or busy somewhere, then don't worry, I will keep you absolutely up to date with what is going on in qualifying at 2019 United States Grand Prix at the Circuit of Americas. And qualifying gets underway in about 3.5 minutes time. So let me read out a couple final comments from the live chat. And we'll get into the session. By the way, thank you, Michael Arvin. Saying nice bar, Chazza. Snazzy. Also, just to let you guys know, I will have new things coming to the watch-alongs in the next couple races. May have a new thing coming to the channel in the race watch-along, which actually has appeared this week before, this little thing. But I'm going to try and see if I can have it on the race watch-along as well. But also, for the Brazilian Grand Prix, you will notice, if I can get these certain things brought in, you will notice some differences which really will improve the, I guess, professionalism of the content. So, yeah, hopefully those things can come through and improve the quality of the stream. Where's Nib from James A? By the way, thank you, Anne Dailies, for saying good man, Chazza. Where's Nib? Asks James A. He is not on today, and he won't be, unfortunately, guys, on the race watch along tomorrow because in Australia, the qualifying and race takes place at around 5-6 a.m. and he has Nib an exam, I think, early on Monday morning. So yeah, there's no way he can appear on the stream this weekend, but on Tuesday for the podcast, we'll just go over everything from the US Grand Prix. So you will hear from him about this race eventually, but just unfortunately not until Tuesday. And obviously good luck to Nib in his exam, as we are moments away from the start of qualifying, and good to see that it's not sold out qualifying, but it's a packed house for sure. Lots of people here at the qualifying session in America. Seki Hybrid saying Lewis's 6th World Drivers' Championship almost guaranteed. It is. In case you guys don't know, even though of course it's not the race today and it won't be decided the World Championship until tomorrow, Lewis Hamilton, all he needs is P8 or higher in tomorrow's race, and he will be your 6-time world champion. So, as long as he finishes the race, basically, he will be the world champion for this season, and he thoroughly, thoroughly does deserve it. Qualifying now underway in less than a minute, and I think that is about time for me to get the text displays ready for you guys. So, let me get the text up here correct. Remaining, of course, in Q1, which is the first session. If you are new to Formula 1, qualifying 1 is 18 minutes long. Qualifying 2 is 15 minutes. And then qualifying 3 is 12 minutes. The shootout, of course. So let me just get all of that stuff ready for you guys. And yeah, all ready. And I'll get the running order up in just a moment as well, once the session does finally start. As Carlos Sainz, we're seeing on the TV in the McLaren, continuing his good form, in qualifying at least. Qualifying is set to get underway in I think about 10 or 15 seconds time. We're now seeing Max Verstappen, and yet qualifying underway in about 7 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And there you go. Qualifying has officially started. By the way, this running order is the first car on track is Robert Kubica. This running order is from practice 2. So I'll update that once everyone has set their first proper time of Q1. And let's now get up the slideshow. So there you go. One picture every 4 minutes. And, well, it's good that the first picture is a Williams because the first car on track is a Williams as well. So there you go. Let's see who can end up getting a great grid position for tomorrow's Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc comes out very early on the soft compound tyre. I think this will be kind of an installation lap for him to test out whether the new or the used power unit that he's put in newly for this weekend is working all right. As also the other Williams of George Russell is on track as well. And they're showing a further replay example that any track who leaves the track at the exit of turn 19, cutting behind the red and white curb, will have their time deleted, as the safety car has done a, I guess, demonstration to show what will get you a penalty in qualifying today. And it'll be interesting to see if you know, drivers do that a lot of times tomorrow in the race, whether they get punished in the race as well. As also the two alphas of Kimi Räikkönen and Antonio Giovinazzi are on track as well, as they're now showing that corner, as Robert Kubica now comes into it now and is about to start, Robert, his first ever qualifying lap at a US Grand Prix. And now opens the DRS on the pit straight and gets his lap underway, as Daniel Kvyat has also joined the track. And Kubica now heads down to turn 1, very bumpy. And Kubica has done okay so far, not looking great. And the bumps continue through turn 1 and turn 2. And now comes into the S's. Turn 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. A great part of racetrack. And he does a 26.2 for the first sector, which is very slow. I know it's the first run in qualifying, but that is quite slow for a first run. As Kubica now comes down to turn 11 and has something attached to his rear wing, a bit of tape or something, which won't do his the downforce very well. Unless it was just sparks, I don't know, but I thought it was tape. As Kubica now completes the back straight. Now comes into the middle sector point. And does a 105.6, which again is not very quick. As he's got Toro Rosso ahead of him of Pierre Gasly, I think. As now Gasly, yes, is on track. But also is Romain Grosjean, who of course crashed heavily in practice 2 yesterday. Here comes Robert Kubica into turn 19. Car not quick enough really to go over the red and white curb. And now comes into the final corner, and Robert Kubica does a 1 minute 38.3, which is, what, 6 seconds off the lap record? So that is a very, 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 very slow lap time by Robert Kubica. As now Lando Norris and Alex Albon are on track on an outlap. Currently on a lap is Leclerc, Raikkonen, Kvyat, Giovinazzi and Russell. Of course, Charles Leclerc is setting at the moment purple sectors. As Charles Leclerc now comes into turn 19 and keeps on the track just about, and now comes into the final corners. Russell goes 9/10 of a second quicker than his teammate, and Charles Leclerc goes fastest by 2.5 seconds on a 34.6, which is not that quick for a first run, but he can definitely improve. As a racing point there, don't know who it was, lets through Pierre Gasly. He was only a 1/10 of a second off Charles Leclerc in the first sector. Again, this Toro Rosso really working well this weekend. And if they are to get P5 in the Constructors ahead of Renault, they've got to now start performing. As now Gasly comes through turn 11 and enters the back straight, where the Honda power unit won't be doing that well. As he now opens the DRS and heads down to the bumpy braking zone of turn 12. And 201 miles an hour at the speed trap there. Pretty good. And he is only 3.5 tenths off Leclerc. So as I thought, not a very quick time by Leclerc. As Kvyat goes second, half a second off Charles Leclerc. And now Gasly enters the triple apex right-hander. And of course, in qualifying trim, that corner is completely flat out. And now he comes up to the final corner. And he should go into second place. And he does, but only by just under 0.2 of a second. So very good first run there for Pierre Gasly. And Kvyat, again, half a second off, now third. Kimi Räikkönen P4, Antonio Giovinazzi P5, and then Russell and Kubica. As we've seen a replay of Kvyat at turn 10, I think, going a bit wide and kicking up some grass. And yeah, that's definitely not the preferred line through that corner. And also a big bump on that corner of turn 9 into 10 as well. As now Sebastian Vettel starts his first time. Oh, and locks up his inside front a lot and goes very wide at turn 1. And now slows down. So the lap is blown for Sebastian Vettel. But yeah, Sebastian Vettel now on track. The only car not on track right now is Kevin Magnussen, who hasn't set a time. Russell and Kubica are also in the pits, but they have set a time. As Sebastian Vettel, replay, locks up big time into turn 1 and goes very wide and loses about half a second at least. Of course, no point continuing that lap. As Romain Grosjean is P4 now, ahead of the two Alphas. Lando Norris goes P1, so as I thought, that lap time by Charles Leclerc was not very quick, as Albon goes half a second quicker than Norris, and Carlos Sainz at the moment is a 10th up on Alex Albon. As Sainz now comes into turn 16, pretty simple corner, and now comes into the long right-hander, and Stroll actually goes up to P5, which is not too bad. And Carlos Sainz now comes up to the final corner, as Perez has actually set a lap time. And Carlos Sainz goes P1 by half a tenth, or just over half a tenth. And is half a second ahead of Lando Norris with 10 minutes to go in Q1. So as Charles Leclerc does another lap time, but only goes P3. As Hulkenberg now goes up to P5. Max Verstappen is now about to end his lap. And surely Max will go P1 with this. And he does by 3.5 tenths of a second on a 33.5. Which for this point of qualifying is a pretty good time. As now Lewis Hamilton does a faster middle sector than Max Verstappen by about half a tenth of a second. And Bottas is probably 0.2 of a second slower than Hamilton so far on his lap. And now Hamilton coming through the last few corners into turn 19. Hopefully he doesn't go too wide. And he doesn't. Oh, he was very close, but just about keeps it on. And now comes to the line, and Lewis Hamilton goes P1 by just under 1/10 of a second, and Valtteri Bottas now comes to the line and goes P3, 3/10 off his teammate Lewis Hamilton. So we have at the moment all times on the board except for Vettel. Well, Vettel has set a time, but not very competitive. He is, though, right now on a lap. Also, though, Kevin Magnussen has not set a time so far. I don't know why. Hopefully he doesn't have a problem. But once as Gasly goes up to P7, once Vettel sets this lap, I think I will do the running order again. As Sebastian Vettel now comes up to the final corner. Car ahead slightly blocking him, but he just about got away with it. And he comes up to the line and goes P4. So Sebastian Vettel into 4th place. So let me now do some of the order. So Lewis Hamilton is currently in P1. Max Verstappen is P2. This is in a replay of Valtteri Bottas and the S's, probably losing the rear end a bit, I think. Or no, just a replay of the car going through that part of the track. He is currently in P3. Vettel is in 4th place in the Ferrari. 5th is Carlos Sainz in the McLaren. Good time so far for them. And then it's Albon in 6th. Charles Leclerc is in 7th place. But again, I think Charles can go a lot quicker than that. Because his first time was not that good. And then completing the top 10, it is Pierre Gasly in 8th place. 9th is Lando Norris. And Kevin Magnussen has just set his first time and gone into P10. So good first time there for K-Mag. As Leclerc is on another lap, so we'll see what he can do. But completing the top 10, yet Norris 9th and Magnussen in 10th. Let's just quickly, though, see where Stroll and Perez will go. As Leclerc has lifted off in the middle sector after doing a purple first sector. Stroll stays in 13th place and Perez comes to the line and backs off, I think. Oh no, goes up to 18th place. So in P11 is Ricciardo, P12 Hülkenberg. Not great so far for Renault, have to say. But again, only Q1. The aim of Q1 is just to get through to Q2. So we'll see what they can do later on if they do get through. And this is what happened to Leclerc. And in turn 9, losing the rear and he backed off. So small mistake there, I guess, or the car just not gripping up as much as he wanted. But Lance Stroll is in 13th place. Daniel Kvyat is in 14th. And then 15th is Romain Grosjean, who is just about in the Q2. And in the drop zone right now, needing to get out with 5.5 minutes to go in qualifying 1, is Kimi Räikkönen, the man who won the race last year. How times have changed as Lewis Hamilton also loses the rear slightly at turn 9. Antonio Giovinazzi in 17th, and then it is Sergio Perez in 18th, and then Russell and Kubica 19th and 20th. So that is the current order of Q1 with 5 minutes to go. Running along the bottom of your screen, it is Lewis Hamilton P1 from Verstappen 2nd, Bottas 3rd, and then completing the top 10, it is Vettel, Sainz, Albon, Leclerc, Gasly, Norris, and Magnussen. P11 to P15, just about in to Q2 is Ricciardo, Hülkenberg, Stroll, Kvyat, Grosjean. And again, needing to get out is the two alphas of Räikkönen and Giovinazzi. Sergio Perez, who starts from the back anyway, so it doesn't matter what he does. And Russell and Kubica, of course, in 19th and 20th. We'll say, though, Russell, very, very good driving again. He's only about half a second off of Romain Grosjean in 15th. So it shows you that he is doing the best he can. Is Russell in the Williams. A great job by him so far. And now we look at the enormous tower at the Circuit of Americas as we have 4 minutes to go in Q1 as Sergio Perez gets wheeled back into his pit box, and that should be it for his qualifying. And yep, I think he will be getting out that car pretty soon. The only cars on track, interestingly, are Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas at the moment, which Can't quite understand unless they're doing a bit of a race run. As now Nico Hülkenberg comes out, and so does Lando Norris and then Daniel Ricciardo. So the midfield cars coming out, Daniel Kvyat as well, to try and make sure of their place in qualifying 2. As we're currently looking at Lewis Hamilton, and he's not going very quickly at all. He's on what looks like a cool-down lap as he's going through turn 16 and 17. And the 2 Haas's now on track. So is Robert Kubica as Valtteri Bottas comes into the pits, and Lewis Hamilton, I'm sure, will as well. Don't know why Lewis is going so slow. I hope he doesn't have a problem. I think we would have seen by now if he did. But yeah, everyone at the moment from P9 down is on an out lap, I think. 2 Alphas, though, I'm not sure if they're on track at the moment. Doesn't say they're on an out lap. And we've only got just under 2.5 minutes to go. Perez is 18th and he won't come out again. And yet the 2 Alphas now do come out. So they're leaving it a bit late, the Alphas of Raikkonen and Giovinazzi, to do an out lap. To not burn up the tyres as Lewis Hamilton starts another run. Let's see if we can go any faster. As there's a car ahead, I think a Williams ahead of him, which is going to block him a bit. As now Pierre Gasly comes out on track in the Toro Rosso. Gasly, though, at the moment is not the front-running midfield driver. That goes to Carlos Sainz, who at the moment is only 4.5 tenths off Lewis Hamilton. Great performance so far, but we don't know the fuel loads and engine modes at the moment. As now Hülkenberg starts his final run of qualifying 1 at the US Grand Prix. He's currently P12, about half a second clear of the drop zone, but the track, I'm sure, will ramp up, so he's got to get a time in here to make sure of his place in qualifying 2. Hülkenberg now comes into turn 3, 4, 5, and then 6, the long right-hander. And then to 7 and 8. And he's only 1/4 of a second off Lewis Hamilton after the first sector, which is quite good so far for Hülkenberg. As Norris, what does he do for the first sector? He's only 13 thousandths of a second off Lewis Hamilton in the first sector. So in that first sector, it's very close. I know it's only half a minute of lap time, but it is very close between the midfield and the top teams and the whole field, really. As now Hülkenberg comes up to the middle sector. How is his time so far? He's only 4 tenths off Lewis Hamilton so far. So this will get him comfortably into Q2. He should go up to P7 or P8 with this lap. As Hülkenberg now comes round the long right-hander. Norris does a purple middle sector. And Hülkenberg now comes into the final corner. And what will Nico Hülkenberg do? Should go in very comfortably to Q2. And he does. He goes P8 in the Renault. As Q1 is now over. As Robert Kubica comes to the line and stays in 20th, but does improve his time and is only half a second off Grosjean, so pretty good there. Lando Norris goes P1 in the McLaren. Daniel Ricciardo goes up to 6th. I tell you, Charles Leclerc, it says he's on an outlap still, but the time is up, so they've got to hope Ferrari. They get lucky here. Magnussen goes up to 6th, and Leclerc is now down to 10th. Grosjean goes only 13th. Lance Stroll is currently in 15th. And Lance Stroll goes P9. So the only drivers yet to improve, I think, further, really, are Gasly, Raikkonen and Giovinazzi. Here comes George Russell to the line. And Russell goes up to 16th place. Great lap by Russell. And could have gone even better. Raikkonen goes 15th. Antonio Giovinazzi goes 15th, so knocks Kimi Raikkonen out in Q1. And here comes Pierre Gasly, who goes P4. So there you go. Q1 is over, and knocked out are the two alphas of Antonio Giovinazzi and Kimi Raikkonen. It doesn't rain, it just pours for Alfa Romeo. What an absolute disaster for that team. So, get rid of that. So Q1 is over. And your finishing order is Lando Norris was actually P1 at the end of Q1 there. That is something that I'm sure McLaren will be hoping to do in a couple years' time. Lewis Hamilton is in second place. By the way, Charles Leclerc was a bit lucky that he got through there because he ended up in P12 and the track was evolving very quickly. The Hamilton P2, and then Max Verstappen was P3, and then in P4 was actually Pierre Gasly. And of course that is down to track evolution, but still, that is a pretty good time if you ask me for Gasly. And then in 5th and 6th, Valtteri Bottas and Sebastian Vettel. The only positive really for the drivers who didn't go out at the end is that they saved a compound of tyre. And that will be an important thing, I think, for the race tomorrow. Saving tyres. Because tyre wear will be quite important tomorrow. And then completing the top 10, Kevin Magnussen getting in P7. And then Daniel Ricciardo getting in P8. Also, great for Carlos Sainz because he didn't go out either. And he saved a set of tyres and ended up in P9. So good there for Carlos Sainz. Lance Stroll completes the top 10. Racing Point will be hoping he can end up there at the end of qualifying. So let me just put him in P10. And then P11 to P15, only just getting through, is Alex Albon, who didn't go out again. So that's why he ended up so far down. Charles Leclerc, P12. He did go out at the end in case I think he needed to get a time in. But yeah, the midfield was not that quick. But he was only about a tenth and a half off getting knocked out. So again, if the midfield was a couple tenths closer, or quicker rather, he was in trouble there. And then, yeah, Hulkenberg 13th, Kvyat 14th, 15th is Romain Grosjean. And then, knocked out in Q1, Antonio Giovinazzi, who outqualifies his teammate, Kimi Raikkonen, who's also knocked out in Q1. Antonio Giovinazzi outqualifies him yet again, just showing how good he's been. Have to say, though, George Russell, I know he was about 1.2 off in the end, getting into the next part of qualifying, but I still think he drove quite well there. So Russell is 18th, and then Perez was 19th, and Robert Kubica was P20. So that is your finishing order of qualifying 1. And let me just adjust this picture slightly. There you go. Qualifying 2 will be underway in probably a couple minutes' time. So let me get the text in all ready for that. So, again, as a reminder for anyone new, qualifying 2 is 15 minutes long. And this is really where the midfield battle gets very spicy because the midfield, as we know, in 2019 is so close. And it really is a great battle between the midfield to get into the top 10, which is such a critical thing. Even though sometimes starting outside the top 10 is not too bad, you still want the grid position. And yeah, session of Q2 will be underway in a few moments' time. So let me just quickly check the chat to see what you guys are saying. Lando first, unbelievable. Indeed. Sam, love your content, mate. Thank you very much for that. Will Max qualify? It's hard to say at the moment, but I think he is actually right in there. He might be able to be on the second row, maybe even fronting the second row. We'll see, but I think we are in again. At the end of qualifying, we're in for an interesting and rather surprising session, I think. Right. The Rainmaster says, go Lewis. Stephanie Brooks, will Raikkonen continue in Formula 1 into 2020? Well, he has been officially confirmed, so he will. Into 2021, though? Who knows? I think it does depend on how 2020 goes. If 2020 is mostly like the last few races have been for him with the Alpha, then I think he probably will retire from Formula 1 because he won't want to be racing around the back of the grid or the back of the midfield, you know, not being anywhere near the points. Kimi Raikkonen has, as Q2 is underway in just a moment, 15, and there you go. That time, by the way, about 1 second behind. But Kimi Raikkonen has not scored points since Hungary, where he finished in P7. So, yeah. The summer break, really since then, Raikkonen has had no luck whatsoever. And neither has Antonio Giovinazzi, because Antonio, I think, has been driving just as well, if not slightly better than Kimi, since the summer break. If those two drivers had a better car, or a car that was, you know, similar to what they had before the summer break, I think they would be very strong at the moment. But Alpha have just completely, I think, bottled P5 in the Constructors and have completely thrown away a good season. As Q2 is now underway, and we have about 14 minutes to go in qualifying 2. And no one is on track yet. But I'm sure they'll be on track very, very soon. Alfa Romeo dropped all their pasta. Mario B, disappointing lap times by Leclerc and Raikkonen so far. Yeah, disappointing for Raikkonen again to get out qualified by Antonio Giovinazzi. As, by the way, Valtteri Bottas and the two Ferrari cars and Lewis Hamilton as well are coming out on track on medium compound tyres. So I think you're really going to see now how quick those two cars are, because they have to push very hard, they will, to get into Q3 on that tyre. So we are now finally going to see how quick these two respective cars are, as now Sainz and Hülkenberg join the track. But right, again, Kimi Raikkonen, he'll be disappointed not only to be in P17, but to be out-qualified by his teammate again, but also to be out-qualified again at a track where Antonio has never raced at before. So, yeah, that's a bit disappointing for Kimi, but I don't think the Alpha is giving him what he needs right now to really be, you know, getting a great result, as all the cars, all of the top 15 are on the track except for the two Red Bulls and the Toro Rosso of Daniel Kvyat. As Lewis Hamilton is probably going to be the first driver. Yeah, he will. He'll be the first driver to set a lap as Daniel Kvyat comes out on track. Here comes now Max Verstappen. Don't know what tyres he's on. I'm going to assume he's on the mediums. Is Max Verstappen. As now Lewis Hamilton comes into, very slowly, turn 19, not wanting to burn up his tyres too much, because of course he has to start on this compound for the race. If he does do his fastest time of Q2 on this compound of tyre. So here comes Lewis Hamilton to start his Q2 lap. How quick is this car in qualifying trim? Let's see. As he comes in turn 1. And the car looking fine so far. Getting nicely, it is, into the apex. And now comes into the S's. This part of the track is where Lewis Hamilton gains the time on everyone else, because he's so committed and precise that he's able to get the most lap time out of that section of track. And now he comes through turn 10 and now down into the bumpy braking zone of turn 11. And he has done a purple first sector so far. Well, now I think Charles Leclerc has now done a purple first sector, but it's been a good first sector still for Lewis Hamilton. As Hamilton now comes to the end of the long back straight. And through turn 12. And yep, Charles Leclerc did a 24.8 for the first sector. Hamilton does a 102.1 for the middle sector. or, for the lap so far. Valtteri, couple tenths slower so far. And Sebastian Vettel is a tenth down on Lewis Hamilton. So yeah, this Mercedes car looking pretty good so far. As Hamilton now rounds turn 19. I'm not sure if he went all four wheels over the curb there, but we'll see later on. As Hamilton now comes to the line and does a 1 minute 33.0. That is a good time. As now here comes his teammate Valtteri Bottas, who goes second by a tenth of a second on a 33.1. Sebastian Vettel goes P3, a tenth and a half down. Here comes Charles Leclerc on the medium compound, and he goes third, a tenth and a half down. So currently, it's Hamilton, Bottas, Leclerc, Vettel, and they're all separated by a tenth and a half. Very interesting indeed. Here comes Lando Norris, though, into the middle sector. And now that Mercedes and Ferrari have turned their engines up, you can see now the difference between the top teams and the midfield, as Norris is 6 tenths off after the first two sectors when he was P1 in qualifying 1. As Carlos Sainz goes P5, only half a second off Hamilton, which is pretty good on the softer compound. Gasly goes 6th, again good time. Stroll is 7th ahead of Hülkenberg. Here comes Norris, who goes P7. Norris about... Oh, and Magnussen goes massively wide at the final corner and goes up to P8. Don't know if his time will be deleted. Ricciardo goes P9, just ahead of Lance Stroll. Romain Grosjean comes to the line and goes P12. That's bad. That's very bad. Max Verstappen on the medium compound goes P2 and is only 3/4 of a tenth behind Lewis Hamilton. Game on. Game on, as massive understeer for Albon in the final corner, and Albon does go P1, but Albon is on the soft compound tyre. So, with 8.5 minutes to go in Q2, it is Alex Albon in P1, but again, Albon on the soft compound. Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas, Leclerc, Vettel are on the medium compound tyres, and it's Hamilton, Verstappen, and then Valtteri Bottas. I wonder if Ferrari are still sandbagging, but you'd think at this point of the weekend they would try to get their eye in for what type of lap time, they can do in Q3. So Leclerc P5, Vettel P6, and then completing the top 10 and in the midfield, just about getting into qualifying 3 is Carlos Sainz, as expected. Yeah, Gasly, kind of as expected given the weekend we've had. Let me just actually update this picture because I think it's not showing the right... There you go. What it should be showing. The racing point. And then we get back to the running order. So yeah, Sainz is P7 and then Gasly is P8. P9 is Lando Norris. And then P10, very surprising, is Kevin Magnussen, who has not shown this weekend at all that he can do that. But so far, with 7 minutes to go in the second part of qualifying, Kevin Magnussen is into Q3 as Hülkenberg. We've just seen a replay of him getting a bit out of shape in turn 9 and turn 10. And yeah, Magnussen in 10th place. That is quite good. By the way, I've just noticed I've spelt Norris wrong. Spelt it Norris, of course. And then in the drop zone, needing to get out, is Daniel Kvyat, who is doing, I think, all right so far in qualifying. And then you have Daniel Ricciardo P12. That's the highest Renault at the moment, with 6.5 minutes to go in the session. That's quite poor for Renault. I thought they'd be better than this, but clearly not. And then Lance Stroll is 13th, which is not too bad, considering where he normally qualifies. And then it's Hülkenberg in 14th, which is quite bad, considering how Hülkenberg normally can be at this track. And then 15th is Romain Grosjean, who, well, compared to his teammate, has got to do a lot better. So in the drop zone, needing to get out with just under 6 minutes to go in qualifying 2 is Kvyat, Ricciardo, Stroll, Hülkenberg, and Grosjean. So there you go. As Lance Stroll's family here, of course, at a race that is close by to where they live. And Hamilton, from Hamilton down to Vettel, it's separated by, again, 1.5 tenths of a second. Hopefully that's a similar case to what we'll see in qualifying 3 for pole position. But I have to say, Alex Albon is not in that fight at all. And I think Albon is going to be fighting Carlos Sainz, really, for 6th place. Actually, not for 6th place, because he's actually on the same compound. And he's ahead, is Albon, by quite a lot. So Albon will probably qualify in 6th, but he won't be in the fight at all in the top 5. He's nowhere near quick enough, I am afraid. And now all the cars back in the pits. And we will, and then we will see who gets through and knocked out. Trotters, where did Albon get his pace? Well, we got to be honest. He's the reason he's in P1 is because he's on the soft compound tyre, and Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas, Leclerc, Vettel, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and 6th are on the medium compound, and Albon is only 3 tenths faster than Vettel, so it is because of the tyre. But he's not as far off as he was earlier in the weekend, so definite improvement from Albon, but he won't be fighting for pole position or fighting for a 2nd row finish, I think, today, as Lance Stroll is the first man to start his outlap for the final run. Can Stroll get into Q3? He's only, what, 10th and a half off, so it is possible for Lance Stroll. Hello, Chase, to you in the chat. Is Red Bull running on softs for the race? Well, with Albon, so far, yes. But Max Verstappen, again, is on the medium compound. Let me just update this picture. Yeah, Max Verstappen is on the medium compound. And is only Max Verstappen 3/4 of a tenth off of Lewis Hamilton. And if they're all running similar power levels to what they will in Q3, then Verstappen's in the fight for pole position. As one of the Red Bulls, and well, all the cars are now coming out on track, even though I don't think the top 6 will do a time, because they don't, of course, want to improve on this lap on the softer compound, because you want to start on the medium, which is the best tyre to start the race with. So all the cars now, I think, are on the track with 2 minutes and 40 seconds to go. And now we cut to Lando Norris. Driver who has been pretty good this weekend, considering that he's never raced here before. And he is, let's be honest, guys, expected to be behind his teammate, Carlos Sainz. Because, again, Carlos has raced here since 2015. I think Lando did practice 1 last year, but it was a very wet and miserable practice 1. So this is really Lando's first real weekend at this track. A good performance so far, doing, I think, the best he can. As now, who is this? It's Lance Stroll in the Racing Point. Can Lance get into Q3? It'd be a massive thing for the team if he could. And, oh, he locks up the inside front slightly and he runs a bit wide. That cost him 2 or 3 tenths of a second, I think. And I think he might have already blown the lap. We'll have to see what his sector times are. Let's see what his first sector time is. And, yep, he has done a slower first sector. I think he lost about 1/4 of a second. That's a shame for Stroll, because if he got the lap nailed together, he's still got time to get it together, but if he got it all nailed together, I think Stroll would be in a great position. And he now enters to Stroll the back straight, as Lando Norris has done a improved first sector for him, as we're now into the final minute of qualifying 2. Stroll now comes into the middle sector and does a green middle sector, but is still 4 tenths of a second off Kevin Magnussen. So unless he provides an absolute mega final sector, then this is going to be him knocked out of Q2 here. Here comes Stroll then into turn 19. And he throws it in. Magnussen, is not improving on this lap. So Magnussen really under threat here. Here, though, comes Lance Stroll to the line. And Lance Stroll goes, or stays, P13. That's disappointing. Here comes Lando Norris, who now comes to the line round the final corner. And Lando goes 7th. As Kevin Magnussen comes to the line and stays in P10. Does not improve on his lap time. Here comes, oh no, Gasly is pitted, I think, and has not improved also. Romain Grosjean stays in 15th place. Carlos Sainz comes to the line and Sainz goes 8th. Grosjean actually went up to 14th. Hülkenberg into 10th for now. As here comes now Daniel Ricciardo, who goes 9th in the Renault. So Kvyat is the only one who can really improve to knock out Pierre Gasly. As Sebastian Vettel goes P1 on the medium compound. Now Leclerc goes P1 on the medium compound. And here comes Daniel Kvyat. Can Daniel get in? No, he can't. Daniel Kvyat has been knocked out in P11. So that is it for Q2. Let me just get rid of that and get the text sorted there. So, Q2 is over. And the order and who is through to Q2 is as follows. So, at the end there, Charles Leclerc went up to P1. Again, though, the two Ferraris, P1 and P2 at the end there, but they did do another lap on the medium compound. So please remember that when going into qualifying 3. So Leclerc first, Vettel second. And then third is Alexander Albon. Of course, he was P1 earlier, now down to P3. So he'll start Albon on the soft, which is not a good tyre to start on. He will be very quick in the first 3 or 4 laps, but after that he will be quite slow. Hamilton was P4. P5 was Max Verstappen. Hamilton, Verstappen and Bottas, though, who are 4th, 5th and 6th, will start the race on medium tyres. And so will the two Ferrari drivers who ended up P1 and P2 at the end there. So Bottas is in 6th place. And then getting through in the midfield to the third and final part of qualifying are the two McLarens of Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz. And then in P9, Daniel Ricciardo. Good performance. I didn't think he'd be able to get into the top 10. It was very close, but he just about got in. And also, just about getting in after a poor final lap was Pierre Gasly in 10th place. So there you go, Gasly in 10th. And then knocked out in the second part of qualifying, Daniel Kvyat, only just by about 3/4 of a tenth from teammate Gasly. Very disappointingly, though, Nico Hülkenberg, P12. That is not good enough, I'm afraid, considering he does go well here. Kevin Magnussen, 13th. Again, he blew it on his final lap. And then it is Lance Stroll in 14th. And then Romain Grosjean, 15th. So knocked out in Q2, Kvyat, Hülkenberg, Magnussen, Stroll and Grosjean. But let me now update this picture again to get it adjusted. There you go. Of the Toro Rosso, I think, of Pierre Gasly, who again is through to the top 10. So, that is Q2 over, and qualifying 3 will be underway in about 2 or 3 minutes' time. So let's quickly check in on you guys in the chat. And I want to ask you guys, going into Q3, are your predictions for qualifying any different from what they were before? I have to say, Hamilton, Bottas and Verstappen are looking a lot better than I thought they would against the two Ferrari cars. It's going to be really close. It's really going to be close at the top. It really will be a closely fought affair. So let me know in the chat, has your opinion changed based on the sessions so far? Jim says Hamilton for pole. Hamilton front row or third. By the way, hello to Ronan Brady in the chat. Great to see you, mate. And also saying, really sad to see Ricciardo just scraping in to get into Q3. It is, but that's Renault this season. They just have produced a poor car compared to what they should be producing. And it says there, Hülkenberg is ahead of Magnussen and Kvyat there. So I don't know if I've got that incorrect, but I swear at the end there it said Kvyat. Oh, and some drivers getting very aggressive with each other at the final end of the lap to get their lap started. Pushing each other off the track. Albon cutting turn 19, the inside of turn 19 to get past a Toro Rosso. And a Mercedes there. No idea what was going on then. That was Verstappen and Hamilton, was it? Was that Hamilton or Bottas? I don't know. I think it might have been Bottas. But it said there, Hülkenberg, Magnussen, Kvyat. But I'm sure it said Kvyat. And yes, it was Hamilton. Interesting. But they've said, FIA, no investigation necessary. But if that order between Kvyat, Hülkenberg, Magnussen is actually different, then at the end of the session, guys, I will get that changed around. But I think that is correct from what I saw, as they're investigating the front wing of the Red Bull for damage. But anyway, let's get everything ready. So Q3 is a 12-minute session, and only 2 runs really take place in the session. And it is all about, really, the excitement is the fight for pole position. And at the moment, it looks as though we've got 4 to 5 cars in that fight for pole position. And that is, of course, what we want to see in Formula 1. A good, hard fight between different cars and drivers for pole position, not just between 1 or 2 drivers in the same team or different teams. As the crowd getting excited on what is still quite a chilly day in Texas, only about 16, 17 degrees Celsius, not very warm compared to, say, Mexico. And let's see what you guys are saying quickly. McLaren's could be fast very soon. True. And let me just find one final comment. Mark Noble saying, wait for Q3, latest in the race. Lewis will show who the daddy is. Okay. Well, we'll see who ends up being the man on pole position very, very soon, as we're now looking on the TV at Charles Leclerc, and Q3 is about to get underway, and there you go. That timer on the top left, again, about a second slow compared to the real time, but is, just about synced up. As the first car on track, or cars on track, is Carlos Sainz, Pierre Gasly, Lando Norris, and I'm sure in a moment, Daniel Ricciardo. As the midfield are going to try and do what they did last time and get their runs in before the top teams come out. Let me just adjust that picture for you guys. The Red Bull. There you go. And yeah, the top cars and Daniel Ricciardo are currently in the pits. Saying that though, Lewis Hamilton comes out quite early, to be honest, and so does Valtteri Bottas on, of course, soft compound tyres. And now here comes as well the 2 Ferrari drivers. And the Red Bull drivers, I'm sure, will be coming out soon as well, as Lewis Hamilton now comes into turn 1 on his outlap. And they'll be making sure, Hamilton, to not damage the tyre at all. So it's in best condition as now comes Max Verstappen out on track. And I think Alex Albon will as well. And Daniel Ricciardo still in the pit lane. So I'm guessing that Ricciardo is only going to do one run, which is not that bad of a thing to do, but it can go wrong, especially if there's a yellow or red flag at the end of the session. And remember, in qualifying, if there's a red flag, the timer keeps running. So that's why getting runs in early is most of the time a pretty good thing, to get your eye in early and to get a time in case any yellow or red flags scupper your attempts at a good time or position later on. And yeah, Daniel Ricciardo still in the pit, so I think he will go for one timed run. But everyone else, Leclerc, Vettel, Albon, Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas, Norris, Sainz and Gasly are on track for the first run of Q3. Who will lay down the marker for them, sorry, if I can speak English, who will lay down the marker for them to all beat the final part of the session, that final run? Let's see on this penultimate run who will end up being quickest, as Sebastian Vettel, I think, will set his time before any of the other top runners, as Norris, Sainz, Gasly, I know Hamilton actually has started his run. And here we go, on board with Lewis Hamilton. Can he get pole position for the 5th time at this Grand Prix? Quite wide on the turn into turn 1, but just about got away with it. And now comes into the S's. Let's see how hard he pushes. And yes, look at that. Just throwing the car at the corners. It is absolutely beautiful. And does a very quick first sector. 24.6 for the first sector. That is a very good first sector. Valtteri Bottas about a 10th off. And Sebastian Vettel has actually gone faster in the first sector. And I think, though, that's been beaten now in the first sector by Charles Leclerc. So very close between the top cars and drivers, as Lewis Hamilton now comes down to turn 12 after the back straight. And Leclerc did a 24.5 for the first sector. Here comes Hamilton, who does a 1 minute 1.5 and goes a bit wide into turn 13 there. And now, as Sainz has gone P1 on a 32.8, which is very quick for him and that team. Here comes Lewis Hamilton, though. Valtteri Bottas has done a purple middle sector. Here comes Hamilton into the final corner, and what's his first time of Q3 comes to the line, and Lewis Hamilton is a 32.321, a new lap record. Will it be broken? Here comes Valtteri Bottas, who goes almost 0.3 of a second quicker. Here comes Vettel, who goes second, only 12 thousandths of a second slower. And Charles Leclerc goes P3 by 0.2. It's Bottas from Vettel, Leclerc, Hamilton. But where's Verstappen? Here he is. What can Max Verstappen do? Comes up to the line, and Max Verstappen goes P3. And Alex Albon is now at the end of his first run. What can Albon do? As he now comes through and just about keeps it within the track limits, I guess. And now into the final corner, Albon goes in P6, but is a lot closer to pole position than I expected. So far, with 6.5 minutes to go in qualifying, it is Valtteri Bottas on provisional pole position with 1 lap to go. Sebastian Vettel is P2 at the moment, only 12 thousandths of a second behind. By the way, that lap by Valtteri Bottas, a new track record for now, for 132.029. As you've seen in 2019, plenty of times in qualifying, Valtteri can be quite a demon in his speed. So Bottas is first, Vettel is second, and Max Verstappen at the moment is in P3. What a grid that would be if we got that for the race on Sunday. And then it is Charles Leclerc in P4. He's got a replay of Max Verstappen at turn 1 on his lap, and he locks the inside front. But to be honest, he makes turn 1 a lot better than Lewis Hamilton did. Hamilton didn't even bother with the apex of the corner. So I'm not sure that was a slower line for Verstappen. But Leclerc is P4. Hamilton, P5. We know he can improve, but that is not a good time on the board so far. And I think he was only slightly quicker than his lap record of last year. So Hamilton has at least another 2.5 to 3 tenths of a second, surely, in his pocket. And then Alex Albon is in P6. Carlos Sainz is in 7th position in the McLaren. And Carlos actually not that far off pole position, considering he's in a McLaren. He's only about 8 tenths of a second off. That is a supreme performance by Carlos Sainz, who we know this season has been very good, and at this track is also quite good. And then Norris is P8, McLaren 4th row lockout at the moment. Yeah, Gasly is P9, but Daniel Ricciardo is on track for his only run of the session, but is currently in 10th place. So Daniel Ricciardo is the only man on track with just over 4 minutes to go. And again, with one final run left, it's Bottas, Vettel, Verstappen, Leclerc, Hamilton, Albon, Sainz, Norris, Gasly, Ricciardo. But I'm sure that'll all change around very quickly. By the way, Sainz, on his lap, almost a second quicker than his teammate Lando Norris. And indeed, about 8 tenths off Valtteri Bottas. That is driver of the day worthy type performance. As now Daniel Ricciardo starts what is probably going to be his only run of qualifying, 3. So let's see what Daniel Ricciardo can do. In the first sector, 3.5 tenths off. That's okay for the first sector. And he kind of cuts there. Turn 8, bumps over turn 9 and turn 10. As Ferrari are about to send out their cars, and we've only got just over 3 minutes to go, so they've got to very soon. As Daniel Ricciardo is now on the back straight. If Ricciardo can put this in P9, I think that's a respectable, good performance considering the pace of the McLaren compared to the Renault. As indeed, here comes Charles Leclerc and Sebastian Vettel. Ferrari have not had pole at the US Grand Prix since Indianapolis 2006, where they locked out the front row. Can they do it again? Who knows? But if they want to win tomorrow, they've got to get, at the very least, pole position. As Daniel Ricciardo now comes into the final corner, and Ricciardo, where will he go? Up to the line, and Daniel Ricciardo goes into P8 and is about 3 tenths of a second ahead of Lando Norris. A good run there for Daniel Ricciardo. And when it comes to Ricciardo, I will update him in the running order once qualifying has actually finished. And Ricciardo probably lost about 1/10 of a second there in turn 8, 9 and 10. So he could have gone even quicker, but I think, to be honest, that's probably the best Renault can do today. As we're seeing Max Verstappen on his outlap. If Max Verstappen gets pole position here, you cannot doubt, one, the Red Bull car is definitely good at the moment, but also this man, Max Verstappen, even though he's highly criticised, and sometimes it is for the right reasons, he is one of the best on the grid, and arguably has been the best driver this season. And if he gets pole, that's just further evidence towards that. But we don't know what Hamilton could yet do, or Leclerc, or Vettel, or Bottas, or even Albon. So we'll see, with just over 1 minute to go in qualifying 3. As Sebastian Vettel is now coming through the long right-hander, as Max Verstappen now starts his final run of qualifying. Can Max Verstappen get pole position? We'll see. We're not seeing his lap right now, but he has started his lap. We're currently watching, I think, Valtteri Bottas. And here is Max Verstappen now coming into turn 3. He's got to throw it down in these corners if he wants pole. And the Red Bull looking good. And we're seeing a replay of Verstappen. Is this locking up again at turn 1? And I'm not sure if he goes that wide though. So who knows whether that's cost him. But Sebastian Vettel in the first sector is a 10th up. But that is not a purple first sector. The 10th up on Valtteri Bottas as he now heads down into turn 11. Before he enters the back straight where the Ferrari really does stretch its legs. And Leclerc is actually not improved on his first sector as the timer is now over and the checkered flag now waving. Who will get pole position here in Texas as Sebastian Vettel brakes hard for turn 13 or turn 12 rather. Now into turn 13. What's he done for the middle sector? He has not improved his middle sector. He's a 10th down. He's got to absolutely give it everything now in this final sector if he wants pole position. As Max Verstappen is about to finish his lap. Can Max get pole? We're not seeing it right now, but Max Verstappen does improve but stays in third. Only half a tenth off pole. Alex Albon stays 6th. And here comes Sebastian Vettel to the line and stays in 2nd place. Does not improve his lap. Charles Leclerc has not improved at all in the sectors. And Charles Leclerc improves his time but stays in 4th as Albon has his time deleted. And Valtteri Bottas is pitting. But here comes Lewis Hamilton. And Lewis Hamilton... Oh no, Lewis Hamilton's pitted. So Hamilton is out and Bottas comes to the line. And does not improve his time. But Valtteri Bottas is on pole position for the 2019 United States Grand Prix. And he strikes yet another blow against the critics of him about him not being a good enough driver by qualifying on pole at a track where historically he has not been that great in the past. So, qualifying is, guys, now officially over. And let me now finalise that grid for the top 10. So, Valtteri Bottas will start the 2019 United States Grand Prix on pole position. Sebastian Vettel starts 2nd, Verstappen 3rd, Leclerc 4th, Hamilton 5th, Albon 6th, and then Sainz, Norris on the 4th row, 7th and 8th. And then Daniel Ricciardo will start in 9th, with Pierre Gasly 10th, and then I think, unless I'm proven wrong, it is Kvyat in P11, then Hülkenberg, Magnussen, Stroll, Grosjean, and then knocked out in Q1 was Giovinazzi, Raikkonen, Russell, Perez, and Kubica. So there you go, guys. Qualifying is over. And for the next 20 minutes or so, guys, let me know in the live chat, what did you think of qualifying and what did you think of the performances of all the drivers and teams? And let me know who you thought the best driver in qualifying was today. For me, I think some names you've got to shout out are Valtteri Bottas, Max Verstappen, Carlos Sainz, Ricciardo, I was going to say Stroll, but definitely not Lance Stroll. And here's a replay of Lewis Hamilton getting understeer at turn 8, running a bit too wide at turn 9, but he didn't actually lose that much time doing that. But clearly, on his dash, he would have seen he was not improving. But yeah, Valtteri Bottas now comes onto the pit straight, and he starts on pole position for the... How many poles is that for Bottas? Is that 4 now? I think it is. I think that's Valtteri's 4th pole position of the season. Actually, no, it's his 5th. It's his 5th pole of the season. And again, showing why he thoroughly does deserve to be at Mercedes for 2020 and beyond. But let's see what you guys have to say. No comment about Max Verstappen. Surely he did something wrong. Sainz, someone saying there, for driver of the day in qualifying. Right, let's find some other comments here from you guys. Rooksfoot says sets up a good race or chaos. Definitely that top 6 looks very interesting. Because the top 3 are all, of course, different cars. Mercedes on pole, Ferrari 2nd, Red Bull 3rd, Ferrari 4th, Mercedes 5th, Red Bull 6th. Top 5 on mediums, and Albon will start the race on the soft. Yeah, we are in for a good race tomorrow, hopefully. I think definitely this track is better for racing than the Mexican Grand Prix track, so we should be in for a good race, but qualifying has been rather surprising today. I don't think anyone would have predicted that top 3 at all. But let's see what you guys are saying. Lewis will tangle the Max again in the first corner. Well, he's got to get near him in the first place. Because at the moment, of course, P5 and Verstappen P3. And I'll tell you one thing. Max Verstappen, I think is, from his grid position, considering his speed in that car, I think he has to be the favourite for the victory tomorrow. Because again, last year started, 15th, and he almost won the race. Imagine what he could do in a car that was only half a tenth off in qualifying and qualified 3rd. So at the moment, I'd have to say that Max Verstappen is the favourite to win the race. And also Valtteri is also a strong favourite, but I'd say Verstappen is my favourite at the moment because he's in a very quick race car, and he is, of course, a very quick driver. Don't ask me, says Lewis has to worry about getting tangled up with Albon, Sainz, Norris fighting with one another. Well, if he does have a poor start, then that is a possibility that can really ruin his result. And of course, if Lewis Hamilton does get knocked out and retires at the end of the first corner on the first lap, and Valtteri converts pole to victory, then the title fight goes to Brazil. So Lewis has got to be careful on the first lap, because again, if he gets knocked out on that first lap and Valtteri wins, then it goes down to Brazil. Even though in Brazil, I think Lewis will still get it done. Lewis will win the championship, of course, but if he wants to win it here, got to be careful on the first lap if he does get a poor start. Ronnie says, class is class, no disrespect to Bottas, but Lewis is the man of competence and self-confidence. Yeah, Lewis is clearly the better driver, but I think people do disrespect Valtteri Bottas a lot, when actually he is a very good driver and does not get the credit that he does deserve. And again, in qualifying against Lewis Hamilton, he has done the job, and that's 7 times now this season that he's out-qualified Hamilton. And there's people out there that will tell you that Valtteri is an average racing driver. I can't remember an average driver who out-qualified a driver of Lewis Hamilton's quality in 1/3 of a season. That's pretty impressive, if you ask me. But you know what? Before we read out some more comments, let me quickly go to Twitter, if I can, to find the official result of qualifying and put it on the screen for you guys. Let's see what you let's see if it's here. There you go. So I'll get it on the screen in just a moment for you guys. And here you go. Let me just get it. And there you go. So let me just enlarge it fully over the 2 bars. Qualifying, guys, for the US Grand Prix has just happened, and these are the final results of qualifying for 2019 US Grand Prix. Valtteri Bottas takes his 5th pole position of 2019. Sebastian Vettel qualifies in 2nd, with Max Verstappen in 3rd. And look at that, only separated the top 3 by half a tenth. We're in for a great race. Charles Leclerc P4, only a tenth down. Hamilton P5, 3 tenths down. I have to say, Lewis did not do well today at all. Albon 6th, Sainz in 7th, Norris 8th, Ricciardo 9th, and Gasly 10th. And then, actually, it is Hulkenberg in P11. So the timing system actually broke then at the end of qualifying 2. So that's why I had Kvyat P11 when it was actually Hulkenberg in P11. and then Magnussen P12, Kvyat P13. I'm going to assume Kvyat had his lap time deleted, and then Stroll 14th and Grosjean 15th, and then in P16 knocked out in Q1 was Antonio Giovinazzi, Kimi Raikkonen, George Russell, Sergio Perez, and Robert Kubica. So that is your results for the US Grand Prix qualifying ahead of tomorrow's race, which, again, to remind you guys, does start the race at 10 past 7 p.m. UK time. But don't forget, I will be live 1 hour exactly before at 10 past 6 p.m. UK time. So don't forget to subscribe for that. Bottom right of the screen, or go to my home channel or homepage of my channel and hit the notifications bell, and also hit the like button if you want to see this content continue. Because again, I will be live at 10 past 6 p.m. UK time, and we will have the hours build up, then the race, and then a bit of a reaction to what we have seen in the Grand Prix. So don't forget to come along to that tomorrow. But let me read out some final comments from you guys. Stephanie Brooks, I want the battle for the championship to go to Abu Dhabi. Well, in an ideal world, of course. Yeah, it would, but Mercedes have been too good. By the way, thank you to Sid and Michael Arvin, who say, good work, Chazza. Great stream. Thanks, Chazza. Have a great rest of your day. Hopefully you do too, Michael. Let's read out, though, some final comments, and then I'll get to the end of the stream. Ronan Brady, someone who I know is not the biggest Valtteri Bottas fan, but he can admit when he's wrong sometimes. Bottas was terrible in 2018, but we've seen a vast improvement. I don't think Bottas was anywhere near as bad as people think in 2018. I think the end of 2018, for sure, he was not good. And we have seen a big improvement at the end of this season compared to how Valtteri did at the end of 2018. You actually look at Bottas's performances since the summer break. At Spa, he was out-qualified by Hamilton, but he was very close to Hamilton in lap time. And in the race, got a good podium finish. That was the best he was going to do. In Italy, in qualifying, actually, if Kimi Raikkonen didn't crash and cause that red flag, Valtteri was actually going to go, because he had to lift, he was going to go onto pole position. So Valtteri really should have, or could have, won that race if Kimi didn't crash in qualifying and cause the red flag or the yellow that he had to lift off for. And in the race, he was, even though he wasn't a better tyre at the end of the race, I think he did perform better than Lewis Hamilton. It was only slight, though. Singapore, yeah, Valtteri wasn't great, but in the race, I think he could have fought Hamilton if the team didn't tell him to drop back. In Russia, again, pace was poor, but he did a great job in holding back Charles Leclerc. Suzuka outperformed his teammate and won the race very dominantly in great fashion. And at the last race in Mexico, I thought he drove well. Yes, he crashed in qualifying, but in the race, had a good, consistent drive to P3. So if you compare the end of this season to the end of the last two seasons, Valtteri is performing at a lot higher level. And I'm hoping that this is not the absolute peak of what he can do. I'm hoping in 2020 he can get even better next season. Let me find a couple final comments. Haslim Ahmed, if Max can avoid contact, then he will win the race. If everything goes to plan at the start, then yeah, I tend to agree. Ronan, will you replace Crofty at Sky? I think Sky need a makeover. Well, I'd love to do that job, but of course I'm not going to, because probably aren't watching. Bottas is really fast in quali. Many fans don't know that Bottas beat Ricciardo in F3 and won title. There you go. You just explained why he is definitely underrated. Right, let me find one final comment if I can, and then we will get to the end of the stream. And the final comment goes to Don't Ask Me, who says both Ferraris will be starting on medium, and they were both quickest on medium, so they'll go fast and long in their first stint. Again, though, you got to remember, Hamilton, Verstappen and Bottas only did one run at the start of Q2 on that compound. Leclerc and Vettel did a second run. So I think you might be misreading that situation. I don't think they're going to be as quick as that as they were in Q2. And Ferrari definitely, if they cannot get into the lead, Ferrari at turn 1 or on the first lap, then I think Ferrari's chances of victory are quite bad, because the Mercedes and Red Bull are going to be quicker in the race. No doubt about that whatsoever. But guys, that has been it for this qualifying watch along today. And it's been great to have you guys along for, let me just get rid of that. It's been great to have you guys along for this stream. Thank you guys for coming along and enjoying and watching along qualifying for this race. And again, I'll be live at 6 PM UK time tomorrow for the race watch along. So don't forget to subscribe for that, as I said a moment ago. And also, I will be uploading my qualifying review in 30 to 40 minutes. So between 11 and 11 PM UK time, I will be uploading that review of qualifying. And then tomorrow, of course, race watch along and then the race review for this Grand Prix. So don't forget to come along to that tomorrow. Like this video to show me you do enjoy the content and you want to see it continue. And also like the content or like the video, because it really does help the channel get noticed. And comment down below what you thought of this video, and comment down below what did you think of qualifying today and going into the race tomorrow. Who is looking good and not so good given their grid position? Don't forget as well to join my Discord server, link below in the description. That is the best place, Discord, for my notifications for my videos and streams. So if you want notifications for when I go live and upload, you've got to be in the Discord server. Because, of course, the notification system on this website is quite broken. And also, we have about 400 people in the server. So it is quite a big server for you to interact in. And as well, follow me on Twitter at Chaz6110. Check out my website, chazahd.com, for more content like this. And like my Facebook page as well, ChazahHDF1 it is on Facebook. But until my qualifying review in about 45 minutes time, and until tomorrow's race for the 2019 United States Grand Prix in Texas, it has been me, ChazahHD. Goodbye.